Well, Super Rugby Pacific is less than 2 weeks away and the Waratahs have already won the title. That's right, it's trial season, it's Kings of January stuff, and Tahs fans are up and about after flogging the Reds at Ballymore. Meanwhile, Force Faithful, they're already buying their finals tickets after pasting the ponies in Perth. Meanwhile, big signing news, Max Jorgensen, 5-year deal with Union. No Roosters, no chicken dinner tonight, and Queensland have a new coach teed up. We've also got Singapore Sevens, they're running hot. Maya Stewart is flying in the short format, and someone gave us access to the Brumbies and Force Media Days. Welcome back to the Scrumbags Rugby Podcast.
We're hearing from the crowds that you're tough as Woodpecker.
Apologising for kicking a drop goal.
Jorgensen, Max Jorgensen, no, he didn't! Oh my goodness me! Rock's there, Rock! He's got the record! Tom Wright, just too good! This is ecstasy for Wallabies fans!
That's right, we're back again for another week. It's great to have your company here, and make sure you go and quickly check out our offering on Patreon. It's running pretty hot. We're very fortunate to have some great fans who've already got around us and now exclusive subscriber content. So jump into the links in our bios and take a look at what we're putting out on Extra Time as well. It's been heaps of fun, especially getting the Brumbies and the Force involved. But Mitch, it's just been an insane start to the season. We haven't even got in round one yet, and I'm assuming you've already bought your tickets to the Tahs home final.
Oh, definitely, mate. I've got it in there. It's on the calendar. It's at home. I've got a shrine going and everything. It's all Tahs, everything at this point. It's awesome. I will say though, it feels great coming on the podcast now after this performance, because last week on the podcast I'm up here saying the Tahs are going to finish first, and I mean you've been splicing that up all over socials all week, and I was surprised that I didn't get as many comments on people saying that I'm an idiot or that I don't know what I'm talking about, putting Tahs number one. But this week, the Tahs have shown up and we've absolutely punished the Reds at home in Ballymore. I'm feeling a little bit more confident.
It was brutal, and you are right to roost, you're right to crow, because the Tahs came out at Ballymore on Saturday afternoon and they just looked phenomenal. 49 points to 19 at the home of Queensland Rugby. We know it's trial season, we know it doesn't really matter in 2 weeks' time, but by God, you must be so stoked with the way the Tahs played.
Oh, very happy with that performance. I think the only thing I was a little bit disappointed about that we didn't crack 50. The way that the Tahs were just scoring points left, right and centre with little to no defence from the Reds, it looked at, half time, if not the 50th minute, that we should nearly get a ton. That's how easy it was and how many points the Tahs were racking up at that point. It was a great performance. Look, there's two big things to take out of this. One, it's a trial. So, we can't get too ahead of ourselves as Tahs fans. It's always good to go to Queensland and come away with a win, even if it's at Ballymore. But the other thing too is that this is looking across the team sheet, like the Waratahs didn't play any of their Wallabies, and there's so many players to come into that contingent. They've got another trial later this week against the Brumbies, and we're expecting some of those Wallabies players to sort of feature in that 23 somewhere. But the thing is, come round one, it's going to be a completely different Waratahs side. So it's great to see that this team does play well. And it's a little thing that sort of was starting to rear its head last year, that the team that was, if you want to say, the non-flashy players, the non-Wallabies players, the guys that didn't have to be rested because of Wallabies protocols, or the guys that, had a long preseason, they seemed to know the game plan that McKellar and the coaches wanted to play. They were the ones that sort of excelled. And if you look back or think back to the performance of the Waratahs last year, that game at home against the Chiefs, there was quite a few Wallabies players that weren't available for that. They rested them. And the team played really well, and they got that upset victory. And so that was what we sort of were starting to see now, is that the wider squad seems to know what Dan McKellar and the coaching team want and how to play. And then you inject the Wallabies players in who haven't had as much game time, haven't had as much time with the players around them. And the attack doesn't seem to click as well. They don't seem to fire as well. So it'll be interesting this week to see how they approach that Brumbies game, whether they go full, as close to that round one team as possible, or they choose to use it like they did this week and give those extended players, the extended squad, some more game minutes. But at the end of the day, like you beat the Queensland Reds and score 49 points. I mean, you can't be too dishappy with that.
No, I think what stood out is something that you actually highlighted. It was the continuity in attack. It was chalk and cheese, these two sides going at it. So the Reds looked pretty clunky. There was a lot of changing. At 10, you're still running through Carter Gordon and Harry McLaughlin Phillips. But in comparison, there was so much drop ball. They never looked too threatening, even though they finished up with 3 tries, but one's right at the death, and the game was well and truly gone by half-time at 35-12. So the manner in which the Tahs came out of the blocks, they just looked so good moving the ball laterally. Their forwards were running harder lines, a little further out from the ruck defenders and making big inroads. And one bloke that I'm really keen to get your thoughts on, Liafi Talatena. They're playing at number 8. He was unbelievable. Finishes up with 2 tries, and he looked a class above in that sort of back row department, which is massive when you're coming up against a starting Reds pack that had 6 Wallabies in it. It was a big performance.
Yeah, there's some players in this team that really put their hand up and have given Dan McKellar a real issue when it comes to that round 1 selection. Because, like as you said, Talatina, he played so well this week. But then you've got Pete Samu, a Wallaby player, a successful player in the Brumbies and Super Rugby, that you would expect he features or he probably gets the nod, but you can't falter the performance that he put in this week either. So some real questions are going to come up, some real selection battles for this Waratahs team, which is awesome. There could very well be, come round 1, some of these guys who've done enough in the preseason and in the trials to get the nod over some of our Wallabies contingent who just haven't got the game minutes under their belt. One of the other things I was really impressed with that we didn't see so much last year, but was the ball movement. It was the way that the Waratahs were able to vary their attack, that they would go to that forward pod, but then they were quickly recycling it out the back, not always to the playmaker, but also to a second pod, and how quickly they were able to shift that ball from, say they start their attacking phase like on the left or the right post, and within a few seconds they're attacking or hitting the breakdown on the sideline. And so that was one thing that the Waratahs last year were probably not that good at, that they relied a lot on the likes of Max Jorgensen, Joseph Akuso-Suali'i, to really break the line and be individual players. But the fact that we had these forwards now who can link is really exciting.
And not only that, but Lawson Crichton at 10 looked really organised. And he's a bloke that went down last year to the Tahs from the Reds, couldn't really crack it behind the young crop that they had with Liner and McLaughlin Phillips, but he was always really solid. And he looked so calm and composed in this game. So there's that 3-way battle at the moment that you look at 10 with, Jack Bowen, Jack Debrasini and Lawson Crichton. But I didn't think Crichton put a foot wrong. He was excellent throughout that series. And then the fact that you've also got a left-footed kicking option in Sid Harvey, who I thought was probably up there with the best Tahs yesterday. We managed to have a chat with him afterwards that we're going to pop in extra time as well. But he looked so composed, and having a left-foot exit on top of your bigger boots of Crichton, of Teddy Wilson, of good coverage at the back from Hendren, and then when they filtered in a couple of other players, they looked really sharp on the boot. And I think kicking is an element that they probably struggled last year as well, just not quite getting the ball into the right parts of the field, but they just looked so composed. It was quite remarkable to see the difference in the quality that we at least saw on Saturday. You know me, I'm not one to gas at the Tahs unless I absolutely have to, but they looked really calm, and they looked fit too.
Yes.
I think the speed with which they got out of the blocks really surprised the Reds. So they ended up getting up 28-12, I think. And then the last try before half-time, a couple of intercepts and runaways, but I think that was off the back of defensive pressure too. And you must have been stoked because the line speed that the Tahs showed, particularly pressing up from the ruck and pressuring that first ball player, was really positive too.
Yeah, that involvement from Harry Potter, literally like 2 minutes into the game, comes off his wing, gets the intercept, runs full field and scores. Also gets chased down and still manages to score the try as well. So that was a nice little finish from him. First time see him in the sky blue, which was always exciting. I think the other thing that is just touching back on that point you started in your little bit there, Lachie, on Lawson Crichton. What was really interesting was that he played 80 minutes in this performance, but he didn't play it. He played the first half at 10, and then in the second half, when they brought on Jack Bowen, they shifted him to 12. And so that obviously goes to show that versatility there that we spoke about last week in our preview, that the centre combinations currently, or the centre depth, does look a little bit haphazard for the Waratahs. But he has shown through Super Rugby Oz last year, when he did play 12 for them, that that's an option. And as you said, he didn't look any less capable at 12 than he did at 10. Like he played both superbly. So that's another great option that the Waratahs and Dan McKellar have, is that they can play him in multiple positions and he still has that ability to play well. The fitness thing, that was really impressive and pretty evident early that the Waratahs were looking really fit. And again, I think that goes down to obviously Tom Carter, head of strength and conditioning at the Waratahs, and what he brings to them. And they looked fit last year in patches, but they did also on the away games, and when they were traveling, they looked quite fatigued. So they've obviously changed something there, and they came into this game ready to go. The Queensland Reds and Les Kiss did mention in his post-match press conference, one of the first things he said was obviously credit to the Waratahs for playing well. But the Reds just didn't seem to be able to adapt or expect the conditions. Like, they looked like a team that this was the first time they played in these conditions, and they were playing in Queensland at Ballymore. Like, they've been training at preseason in these conditions. Yes, it's been hot in Sydney, but I'm pretty sure it's been consistently warm and humid in Queensland all the way through that preseason. So the fact that the Waratahs did show up and were able to start strong, start fast, and really did look that fitter team out of the two was another, credit to the Waratahs, and maybe a sign of some worry for the Queensland Reds.
Yeah, I think so. Tommy Carter's now, this is his second year with the program after coming across from 7. So he was with the Tahs last year. And you're just looking at the movement across the park. And yes, it's hot, it's January, it's disgusting, but they did look more mobile. And there's no size difference. If anything, that Tahs pack was pretty massive. You've got blokes like Clem Halaholo playing 6. Phillip and Blythe are both huge, Talatona, and then the blokes you're bringing off the bench are massive. They looked really mobile. And I think you need to be at Super Rugby level because the pace just gets quicker and quicker. It's not the same as a test match where you can afford to have your Skeltons, your Tupos, boys who are just sort of up and down. You do need to have that lateral movement. And the defensive reset, I think, from the Tahs showed how fit they are. They're rolling clear of the rucks. They were getting back into position and getting off the line. And that's a great sign both of intent and of fitness. So hats off there. I don't know what I can even say from the Reds performance. There were very few highlights. I am excited about that matchup between Trayvon Pritchard and Sid Harvey on the wing. That looked very much like a matchup that we're going to see a lot more of, and both were so good in the air. The footwork from Pritchard is nuts. Like, just getting out of his own corner and exiting. But also Sid Harvey, 7 from 7 off the tee, scores a great try, outpaces the rest. Like, there's a lot of talent. And if we can pivot back to the Tahs, so few of their big stars in the backline were involved in this game. Yeah. I know it's something you mentioned before we started recording, but Andrew Swain on the stand call highlighting no Suaalii, no Jorgensen, no Kellaway, just for starters. We also haven't seen Tristan Riley yet, so the only regular Wallaby that was in that backline running around was Harry Potter.
If you call him a regular Wallaby, yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, like, how do you fit all these people in? I guess we'll see on Thursday when there's that Tahs Brumbies trial, but you're sport for choice out there.
And that's it's a good thing, but it could be a bad thing. And as we lead into round 1, like I was saying before, how do you slot those Wallabies players in and still keep that continuity? Because at the moment, you'd love to take this form that we saw on Saturday in Ballymore into round 1, because out of the two, it looked like the Waratahs were more cohesive, knew how they wanted to play, and had the Reds' number. But you then start adding in those Wallabies players who are class, and they're great international players, but they won't have that same consistency. They don't, maybe, I mean, I'm just guessing here, but from what we've seen in past seasons, that they come in and they play more of an individual game, that they're not quite across the game plan. They don't know the nuances of how to attack in the outer channels and those sorts of things, where these guys that are currently in the system do know that. So it's difficult, but I mean, obviously, RA aren't going to like Joseph Akuso-Suaalii sitting in a tracksuit on the sideline with the amount of money they've paid. So he'll start regardless. And Andrew Kellaway, I mean, the way that this back three they played in this trial, Kellaway should be worried because he's going to find it hard now to crack a 23.
I think that he is the most at risk of being pushed to the outer, just with the talent they have there. And it's not so much a case of Kellaway's not up to it. I think we saw at test level he gets a little bit exposed. He didn't have the best super season, but that's still, hundreds and hundreds of professional games experience that they're not going to want to lose, and will probably have him involved. I can see Kellaway as playing a really important role, playing 23 a lot of the time, and then you've got coverage across wing, outside centre and fullback. And then that means that you can carry someone who's either a dedicated 10 or a 10-12 cover like a Lawson Crichton. So I still see him playing a big role within the squad, but just there's so much to like about Sid Harvey. Like we made a point of talking about him off air and wanting to grab him for a quick chat on Extra Time because his conversion from playing a lot of junior footy with the junior Wallabies, obviously went really well at their world champs in the TRC, but also on the Sevens circuit. Like this is a guy who's had 2 years to hone his craft along there, and it's so evident around his core skills, like his kick chase, his one-on-one tackle. He only got left for dead once, and aside from that, he's got pace for days. So, like, the more players we see coming through that Sevens program, and I swear it's something that we bang about all the time, but you make better 15s outside backs with that Sevens experience because it's so much fitness, it's core defensive skills, and he looked the goods. He looks like a really good prospect for you down there.
All right, so let's switch the focus now, and we need to go into the Queensland Reds because that really was a horrific performance from them in a lot of regards, and this is their second trial. They played against the Western Force last week, and they also didn't look that great in that either. A lot of people, you included, Lachie, said the Reds finished top of Australian rugby and were crowing earlier this could be their year. The trial form hasn't been there. What for you as a Reds fan is the biggest worry at this point?
Well, the biggest worry is that you won that game and you get the soapbox first up in the interviews. I mean, I was more worried about what I was going to say to you after going over a 49-point thrashing. Look, with trial matches, I never know what to really think. I know that the Tahs played a lot better than the Reds did in that game. So trying to look at the Reds' performance in this, I think it was error-filled. There were so many drop balls. There were loose passes. That's why there's 2 intercept runaway tries. But what concerned me more was the composure around attack. The attack shape just looked a bit clunky. And that's not just what was driven off 10. I thought Carter Gordon had some okay moments, but by and large, the Tahs looked like they had a lot more time with the ball. They were more composed in the ruck base. I think they played with a bit more depth, and that gave them the time and space to push laterally to find seams in the Reds' defence. The Reds, when the attack broke down, or if the first phase broke down, and it often did, they would go back to, okay, 3-pod, let's hit Lucan, let's hit Fazler, let's hit a strong ball carrier who can get us over the line. And it didn't look particularly creative. So when you compare the Tahs, like the little interplay with Joey Walton grubbering through the line for Pullman, that's great variation inside the 22. So the Tahs always looked sharp. You also had the second try of the day, which was Harry Potter swinging back from left to right and giving a nice pill out to Talatona, who stepped inside. It looked like the Tahs had more ways to break down the Reds' defence, and the Reds didn't look a lot like they were going to do that. So the tries came off pressure from charge downs, from line-outs, from scrums mauls, big boppers going over. It was very route one. There wasn't a lot of creativity. So I wonder whether the concerns around the fly half position at Queensland and not knowing who the 10 is with Lyon and McLaughlin Phillips and Gordon there has actually contributed to a bit of that confusion because there's not a clear general. Also, missing McDermott for these opening bits, you can tell like the speed of play is down considerably. Kalani Thomas is a test player, but he's a one test player. It's not a like for like. It's a like for like in style, but not in execution. So... Yeah, for me, it was you sort of try and bury that one and forget about it. But a lot of people are pointing to the post game with Les Kiss, and he was not happy. Like there was a lot of correctly attributed credit to the Tahs for the pressure, but core skills, catch pass, working back in defence, they looked like they were short. They looked like they were short on breath and short on time. So. Massive 2 weeks for the Reds to turn it around before they then go to Sydney because like the Tahs will have their tail up after that. You don't frown after 49 points at Ballymore. So I think the Reds will be getting an absolute serve this week.
They will. The 10 battle is interesting because I didn't think that either Harry McLaughlin Phillips or Carter Gordon really put their hand up for that starting role in round one. This is the second trial now. There's no more, opposed opposition now until round one comes. Who do you think gets the nod?
Well, it's interesting that we haven't seen Tom Liner. So a couple of outlets have reported that maybe Liner's still managing hamstring or something else. We don't really have an in on that, but I'd almost feel at this point more comfortable with them rolling out McLaughlin Phillips, because at least he's played in the system for a couple of years. I was pretty bullish on wanting to see Liner and Carter fight it out as the two up front, but with Tom not having any trial time, and he wasn't even listed on the team sheet. I've just got the team sheets in front of me from the Ballymore trial, and it was pretty evenly split with Carter, and then McLaughlin Phillips probably played more time. So it didn't look clean. I think they probably want to see Carter starting in that big game and being given reins, but I wouldn't be surprised if McLaughlin Phillips is the one that gets the nod and at least plays the system. So, interesting times ahead. It didn't look too convincing from the Reds, and you're right, it didn't look like that against the Force the week prior. And the Force are doing well too. But before we get into that, is there anything else you want to touch on for this Reds Tahs game?
I could talk all day about the Waratahs. I mean, I think I said on our group chat during the game that after the fourth try or something, I said they better start engraving on the Super Rugby Trophy Waratahs, because our season is well and truly flying. But no, look, the exciting thing for Waratahs fans is that, and I mean, we try not to get ahead of ourselves, but we've seen in the past years that the Waratahs do trial well, but just felt something different about this team that they're putting together. The depth element that, yes, we've lost Taliel Tupou, we've lost Angus Bell, we've lost some players. Our scrum still looked really good against the Reds. We were still winning some hits, some penalties there. The boys are looking fit. Like, it's exciting that we've got a home game against the Queensland Reds in 2 weeks' time on Friday to kick off our season. So, and just if you're a Waratahs fan, make sure you get tickets to be there, because it's going to be an absolute cracker. And if we can put 40, 50 points on the Reds in round one when it actually matters, come away with a bonus point, even better.
Just remember, you have not won a super game against the Reds since 2023. So let's woo up for a quick sec before we start talking Kings of January. But no, the Tahs are looking good. The Tahs are looking sharp, and so are the Force, which I didn't expect to be saying 3 or 4 weeks ago. But we've been able to sit down with a couple of Force players as part of their content day. We've now seen 2 trial games, and they absolutely pasted the Brumbies on, it was Friday. It was Friday afternoon. So if we take a peek at this, Mitch, it was streamed on the Force's Facebook, but they shot out...
YouTube. It was meant to be Facebook, but the link never came through Facebook. There was a bit of a technical issue. YouTube. It's on YouTube, so go to YouTube.
There we go. So you can rewatch this. It's got a call as well. The Force ran in 5 tries, pretty hot off the dome. They had 35 points to nil at half-time. They finish up 42-12. Mitch, is this more a case of the Force looking really good or the Brumbies being off the boil? Because it kind of looked like both.
Yeah, this one was quite interesting. I thought this result was going to be it's the reverse of the Waratahs game, right? So the Waratahs didn't play their Wallabies, didn't have any of them in there other than Harry Potter, and they won quite convincingly against the Reds. This week, in this trial game on Friday night, it was the opposite. So the Reds had the Force had all of their Wallabies contingent, and really, like, this looked like a team that you would expect to see named round one. And then the Brumbies, they were more of a traditional trial team with not a lot of Wallabies featured, wider training squad, that type of thing. And the result was what we expected, really. If you look through and compare the two teams, the Force much more competitive, much more cohesive. The way that they wanted to play and the way that they did play, they really troubled the Brumbies in pretty much every facet of the game. Like you highlighted there, 5 tries in the opening half. Carlo Tizzano goes over for 3 within the opening 30 minutes. Like, absolutely incredible form for him. You got to be excited about the form that he's currently in. And all of this Western Force team is coming into round one. And the Brumbies, on the other hand, very similar to the Reds, even though the Reds did have all of their Wallabies and they were the stronger team named, the Brumbies looked lost. They didn't seem to have any direction. They didn't seem to have a clear game plan. Whether that comes down to Edmed first time playing for the Brumbies in that system, in the 10 jersey for the first time for them, didn't really give himself much to talk about and put his hand up for that selection round one. But in saying that, even when Meredith came on in the second half, he also didn't straighten things up and look that much better. So yeah, a few warning signs for the Brumbies early, and the Western Force, looking really, really dangerous at this point.
Yeah, it was clear cut stuff, right? Like the speed with which the Force got over in the first 3 minutes. They won a penalty, forced the scrum, and just camped in the 22. Bash, bash, bash. Tommy Robertson goes over, and it happened so quickly. Like they were able to maintain pressure in the 22. The physicality of that pack was something that we sort of spoke about when we were doing our squad previews for extra time. We're going like, shit, this is a big Force pack, and they looked it too. So the speed with which they came around the corner in particular and hitting just outside sort of the third defender, and also just a couple of switch plays. Like we saw them run a tap move where Tizano goes into halfback and switches from right to left across to some more runners, and they looked really sharp. So you throw in some great counter attack from the back from Matt Greeley, Ben Donaldson looking really good off the tee. This was a composed Force team, and they've now got 2 wins under their belt, and they've got a home round 1 game against the Brumbies in a fortnight, and you're starting to think, actually, the Force probably go into this as favourites from what we've seen so far, which is crazy to think. But the Brums just looked, you're right, they looked lost, and I'm just not sure Edmed looked comfortable at all in that game.
One of the big things that comes for me out of both of these trials, and you've got to if you put your coaching hat on, you start to think that round 1 is a few weeks away, and both of these fixtures were the round 1 fixtures. So the Waratahs host the Reds and the Force host the Brumbies, which both played each other. So is there an element there of holding back, of we're not going to play our key game plan to show our hand too early to the opposition, but we're just going to play rugby? And that's kind of how it felt coming out of this game. The Brumbies, if out of the two, looked like they just played rugby. That they were a team of individuals who went out there and said, we're just going to play our role. Edmed, I'm going to kick for touch. I'm going to do what I need to do. The forwards, we're going to hit rucks. We're going to do what we need to do. But when they interplay and they interchange, didn't really start to flow or build too much momentum. The Reds, likewise, they look like a group of individuals who hadn't played together, didn't really have a clear game plan of how they wanted to play. Whereas both the Waratahs and the Force, you can see how they wanted to play and that they were, as players, executing a game plan. And so, yeah, then you start to wonder, is that what we saw? Is the Reds and the Brumbies holding something back? Is that then a missed opportunity now? Because theoretically, they've both thrown this opportunity away. We didn't learn much other than that didn't work. And they didn't come out of those trials looking any better than they went in. The playmaking options for both the Reds and the Brumbies is problematic. And you would say, as a Brumbies fan, as looking at them for round 1, Meredith probably puts his hand up as the one who's edging it a little bit more than Edmed because he has played in the system. He knows what the game plan is. Edmed he needs more minutes.
How do you fit him in? Does it come off the bench? Is it a time thing? Like, I think that if the Brumbies were to line up Tane Edmed as a starter round 1 over in Perth, they would be going, hey, Jamie de Crepney, Tizano, Ekuasi, can you make this bloke's life hell for the first 40 and let's get him pulled? So I think that's what a lot of people would be looking to target, because Edmed seems like when he's up, he's so good. Like we saw a couple of years ago when he was at the Tahs, he was pulling strings at Leichhardt. He's got that in him, but it looks to me like it's a confidence issue. And maybe we're well off the mark here, but like behind a pack that struggled to get going, he dropped a couple of early balls in Perth. It seems like we're heaping a lot of pressure on this guy, but he's gone to Brumbies to work with Larkham, to work in that system, and the first look wasn't a great one. So they'll have another trial, as we mentioned, on Thursday. So we're keen to get eyes on that where we can, Tahs v Brumbies. But yeah, a lot of questions for Brumbies, a lot of questions for Reds, and we've got Tahs and Force fans very excited at the first couple of flickers of what they've seen this year.
Yeah, it was good to see rugby back again, and like it almost had me sitting there thinking as I was watching both of these games, like there needs to be something on the line here. Like I know that the Reds and the Waratahs have that Santos Cup that they play for. Was that I don't think that was officially on the line here. I know we've got Super Rugby Oz later in the year, but you don't have your Wallabies then. Surely Rugby Australia could come up with some like pre-season quick competition of something. I don't know. It just felt like if there
pre-season cup.
Yeah, it felt like if there was something on the line, maybe some teams would have taken it a bit more seriously than others. But anyway.
I think you've nailed it with the cloak and dagger stuff. Like, I think there's... Like, Bernie Larkham hasn't become the most successful Australian Super Rugby coach without cause. Like, he'll know what he's doing, and I'm sure we'll see some new players come in and slipped into position, and hopefully, same for my sake, for my blood pressure, hopefully the Reds do the same come 2 weeks' time in Sydney. But the Tahs have more than just a trial match to cheer about, right? There have been some massive news with the signing world. We started getting whispers about Max Jorgensen's 5-year deal on Wednesday afternoon, sort of coming through to our channels, and then it breaks Wednesday evening via the Sydney Morning Herald. So, Max Jorgensen, 5-year extension. They're reporting around $900,000 a season, and there is an option for sabbaticals in 2028 and 2030. So, to put this into perspective, Mitch, we know how good Max Jorgensen is, and he is still very young, early 20s. He now has the equal longest deal ever in Australian rugby history. Same as Michael Hooper, same as Lottie Takiri. They've got him for 5 years. How big is this for Australian rugby?
I guess it's a little bit disappointing we didn't offer him 20. No, but all seriousness, like, this is a great signing. The fact that he's back and he's staying in rugby for 5 years is awesome for the game. I mean, just alone for the fact that I have seen so much media come out of rugby league channels going on about, and even earlier in the week, Monday, Tuesday, all these rumours spurting about that, the Roosters are so close to signing Max Jorgensen. I was like, no way. There is no way that Max Jorgensen is leaving in 2026 or at the end of 2026, 27 of a home World Cup. There's no way he goes to the NRL, and never had I thought we'd get him for 5 years. Like, that's monumental. There's things in this contract that are really exciting for him as a player that has obviously helped him win that, to sign that, to want to stay. That you've got the option of playing in a home World Cup. You've also got the option now of going to an Olympics in the sevens. There's also 2 sabbaticals, was it? 2 sabbatical windows in that 5-year period. So there's a lot to like for Max Jorgensen, but there's even more to like for Australian rugby fans. The fact that we have him playing for the Waratahs for that period, he's just going to get better. He's going to be like, you think back in the past of big players who were on these contracts. Lottie Takiri was on a 5-year contract, Michael Hooper. Like, we don't just give these contracts to anyone. Max Jorgensen has really earned that right to be in Australian rugby for that amount of time. And the fact that he has committed to it, awesome.
It's 21. It's just an amazing deal to sign as a 21-year-old. Like, we know Suoliti is a similar age profile. He's a bit older now, but a high money deal. To get that for 5 years is so big. And like, I think what you raised about the sabbatical is super exciting, because not only is it financially responsible, so you've got other clubs paying for a big chunk of this while he's away, in theory, but also, like, we've seen really positive things come from people doing sabbaticals. Like, look at what Angus Bell's doing with Ulster at the moment. How well Michael Hooper came back from Japan with the season.
Don't talk about Exeter though. We don't like.
No. Oh, they keep injuring our
Hooper
boys.
Been broken.
Oh, we are steaming about this. We'll talk about it at the back end of the episode. But by and large, like, sabbaticals seem like a really positive thing and a means to travel the world and see other parts. And it's better than going from Thailand to back and over again. It's something fresh and exciting across this 5-year period. So I see like a tiny bit of risk when you look at the Takiri deal, because he didn't do his full 5 years. That was 2007 to 2009. Before it all broke down, and that was due to a bunch of other things going on. But there is risk involved, and it's never certain. But with Jorgo and what's coming up in Union, it does feel like such an exciting time to have this live wire sticking around. And it's been so salty from other publications that going, he was a done deal. And then as soon as he's gone, he wouldn't have made it in league anyway. He's too small, he's too this, he's too that.
He wouldn't have be playing reserve grade. Right.
Yeah, Jersey flag stuff. Now, I want to ask you this, though, around Jorgo. Do we need Max Jorgensen? And it seems trite after we've just gassed him up, but we have so many outside backs. We've got Mark Nawaqanitawasi coming back, Peach, Potter have all been excellent over the past couple of years. Suoliti is still an option for the wing. Tom Wright is going to be back in the mix too. Do we need Max Jorgensen in Union?
100% we do. Just look at the Lions series. Like, we don't win that third test without Max Jorgensen. He scored that runaway try from nothing. Like, he had no right to get that intercept, that sort of like contest in the air, come away with it and run away to score. Like that sparked the team to go on to win that game. And so he's the kind of player that he makes something from nothing. And he's a good enough finisher that he can finish off great set piece plays, and like that England game where he's at the end there when Nikita makes the break and flings through and scores a try. Like, he's good for that sort of stuff, but he's also good for just giving you a miracle try from nothing. Do you remember his first ever try for the Waratahs in Super Rugby on his debut? Like, he literally comes into contact with, I think it was Mackenzie, strips him, comes out of the ball and runs straight under the post and scores. Like, that's just freakish. He's good for 5, if not 10 points of nothing in a game, and we need that in the Wallabies.
It's the star factor, right? Like, he's genuinely becoming a star. You look at even the Wallabies' last game against France. How did he pull that out of his ass? That was an incredible solo effort. He's had that brilliant one in South Africa as well. Like, he is good for it. And I think, like, it is such a hotly contested position, but it feels as though Jorgensen could be the guy in the 11 jersey for a very long time, unless he's someone that you might see moving into 15 at the Waratahs. And I'm kind of keen to get your read on where Jorgo fits into that Tahs backline before we move off this. Where do you think he slots in?
Just one last quick thing before we get to the Waratahs side of things. The other thing I just really like about Max Jorgensen is he is the kind of player that you want to build your game around. Like, he's the guy you want on a billboard, because he's just off the field. He's awesome bloke. Like, he's not just a great rugby player. He's a great person in general. Like, he lives the values of rugby. Whenever you see Waratahs players go out to junior clubs around New South Wales and Sydney, like, a lot of the times, no discredit to the Waratahs players, but a lot of the times it's like Tom Lambert, it's extended squad. It's guys who aren't playing in the 23, but it's always Max Jorgensen. Like, he's always the first guy to put his hand up and wants to do that. Whenever the Wallabies need someone to do some form of media, Max Jorgensen puts his hand up. Like, he's just happy to do that, to promote the game, to sell it. Akuso Suli is another player like that, which is great. He has had that introduction to rugby league, though, so he probably has some little things in his preparation. I'm just saying here, not speculating here, not saying anything bad of him. But just Jorgensen is the kind of player that, like, I don't know if he ever will be a Wallabies captain in future just because he plays on the wing, but he's that kind of leader, that kind of player that you would play for. He just seems like, on the field and off the field, like an absolute genuine bloke.
Yeah, and he does an ambassadorial role for Rugby Australia too with the junior program. So around Get Into Rugby, he's the face of that, I think, with Faith Nathan from the Sevens program. So very relatable. Like, the kids love him, and he's a bona fide superstar after what he did against England, and then throughout this year, the highlights reel keeps getting bigger. But do you see him pushing into fullback at the Tahs this season?
It could happen. I mean, he's played there in the past. Look, it's as much as, do you play Joseph Suaalii out of position and play him at fullback as well? Like, both of these guys are Wallabies players. In a Wallabies jersey, Jorgensen's playing 11 or 14, and in a Wallabies jersey, Joseph's playing 13. So does it make sense to shift them out of position for the Waratahs? I know if you needed to do it, you might do it, but then for the greater good of Australian rugby, it doesn't make much sense. Does that answer the question? I probably don't want to see him play fullback if we don't need it, just for the sake of it. Like, if the Waratahs are going to win a Super Rugby trophy with him playing fullback, I'll take it. But at the same time, if the Wallabies are going to win a World Cup with Jorgensen playing on the wing, then he plays on the wing for the Waratahs.
It's massive. It's so exciting, and as much as it pains me, it is really exciting when you look at what the Tahs have got on paper, but also just the first taste of trial footy. And we know it's trial footy. We're going to keep stressing this, but it looks good. It looks positive. Mitch, is there anything else on Jorgo? Do you want to chat through, or should we talk some more signing news?
No, let's keep going. Yeah.
Beautiful. Bit of news at the Reds that came a bit earlier in last week. Do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, massive news for Queensland fans. And Lachie, you must be absolutely jumping out of your skin with the announcement of the replacement of Les Kiss. Les Kiss is taking over the Wallabies coaching role at the end of the autumn. What is it called? Nations Cup, whatever those sort of home nations are in June, July. He will become Wallabies captain leading into the Rugby Championship. Is that officially what it is?
Yes.
Or after?
Yes, that's right.
Anyway, he takes over at some point through 2026, so that means he's no longer the Queensland Reds coach. The news is that Vern Cotter from the Auckland Blues will be taking over the Queensland Reds coaching job 2027 and 2028. Lachie, this is a massive signing for the QRU, and I must admit, one that I didn't see coming, but you must be stoked with it.
I am stoked. I'm stoked for what it actually means for a playing style at Queensland. Like Les has taken the Brad Thorne team that sort of won a Super Rugby Oz title for whatever that's worth, and I think elevated it from just a straight up and down, very physical side to having a bit more creativity. But I think that there's something about the Reds that needs like a stick. It needs someone to give them a whack and sort of get them playing really hard-nosed footy as well. And that's what we saw Cotter achieve most recently with the Blues in 2024. He took probably the most talented team on paper in New Zealand and made them a scary team, made them an abrasive team. And that's probably what the Reds lack. There's so much talent on those books. But when you look at the lineup, maybe outside of Salakai Loto, there aren't people that scare you in that pack. And now I think with Cotter's fingerprints on it, they can turn that into a really sustainably scary pack, if that makes sense. That's to be feared. So as far as Vern Cotter's concerned, he is equal only to Michael Checker in winning titles both sides of the hemisphere. So he's got a top 14 gong with I think Claremont back in the day, maybe Montpellier, so apologies if I got that wrong. And then also with the Blues, that's matching Checker with Leinster and the Tahs. He can do it. He had Scotland for a couple of years, Fiji for a couple of years. Knowing this far out is exciting because it creates continuity. And I think having an international coach involved in Australian rugby in any capacity can only be a good thing. I think he said when the news broke last week that he'd locked this in before the All Blacks job even came about. So we're probably lucky to have him come into Queensland because he would have been right up there, I think, for the All Blacks gig. He's very well respected. So for me, it can only be a good thing. And it gives Kissy one last roll of the dice this year before he goes into Wallabies camp. And then we have a very good coach on the books at Ballymore. So I think that it will take this team to a different level. But that's a problem for 2027. We've got to get past his Blues first, and we'll see how they go.
So I've got two questions for you that come out of this. The first one is 2 years, a 2-year contract. That's pretty short in regards to sort of general periods that coaches get. I know generally, like I think when we first signed Les Kiss, he was on 3 years and then he extended. So is 2 years enough, do you think, for Vern Cotter to implement change and to shift away and to bring this Reds team in some success?
I think so. I like shorter deals for players and for coaches, to be honest. Like we're talking about Jorgo's 5 year, but that's probably an outlier. I think shorter deals...
I'm thinking 3, generally, yeah.
Yeah, well, shorter deals of one year is a bit ho-hum because then you're just panicking about stacking around. I think 2 years actually gives you time to prove that your systems are working. And then you earn the third, you earn the fourth in that regard, so regardless of whether you're a player or a coach. So I like it. I think Cotter seems like the kind of coach that drives results and change quite quickly. It's a very, like as we touched on earlier, the pack becomes more physical. There's very abrasive contact. Set pieces really heightened, and the forward carry is particularly advanced from what we've seen from the Blues. So I think that 2 years will be enough time. And I mean, geez, the Reds have had this quarterfinal block for a long time, ever since Super Rugby went Pacific, right? They have not been able to get past it. The Super Rugby Oz through COVID doesn't really reflect the dominance of the NZ sides at the time, so they're still well off the pace. And then you have to go back, I think, I don't want to get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure 2013 was the last time the Reds played in Super Rugby combined finals. So it's been a long time, and Reds fans like me will hang on to 2011 till the cows come home. But it has been a long time since there's been sustained semi-final appearances, and I think the Reds probably need that. There's a lot of pressure on Les coming into the role. There's a lot of pressure on the Reds with the squad that they've assembled. I think when you got a full-strength Red side, it's almost entirely Wallabies, and they should be a top 4 side. Like I've gone out and said they should finish third. That's where I've picked them to finish. But you look at the trial game and then you start really questioning that. So I think with like bringing it back to Cotter, I think that he's the kind of person that can take the talent and the style that Kiss has implemented and built, and he can strengthen it. He can make it harder. He can make it tougher. He can make it a more abrasive brand of rugby that puts teams offside. I think that a lot of New Zealand teams in particular will look at the Reds and go, they're talented, but they are gettable under pressure. They can crack. They don't have the players or the style to upset us. Maybe Cotter's the person that can add that off the back of hopefully, for Queensland's sake, successful 2026.
So to this other question, two parts to it, and they blend together. It's just a general theme. What are your thoughts on having Kiwi coaches? Like, this is bringing in a Kiwi from outside the system in and taking in Australian rugby, there's 4 head coach roles in Super Rugby. So you would think that we'd prioritise an Aussie in that situation, but no, we've gone for a Kiwi in this time. What are your thoughts on bringing in a Kiwi? And the second part of that question is, what does that then mean for the coaches that are currently in the QRU system? So, like, Zane Hilton comes to mind as a coach who everyone in Queensland and Reds fans were sort of thinking might be an option for taking that role post Kiss moving on. Does he stay? Does he get to work with Vern Cotter, or is he acts and he's off somewhere else and Vern brings in his own coaching setup?
I've no idea, to be honest. We'll just do the Kiwi part first. I think that good coaches make environments better regardless of where they're from. So having him come in as a head coach, feeding down information to more Australian coaches, although there is an international flavour. Jonathan Fisher's coming in from the UK, who's part of the Red setup as well. So it's not all entirely Antipodean. I think if you bring in a good coach and they disseminate that information, they upskill an environment, it makes everyone better. So I don't have too much of an issue with that. I think at like test level and international level, I think it's hard not to feel patriotic about wanting an Aussie to be the coach of your Wallabies, your Wallaroos, your Sevens. But I think we now have an environment where we have had so many of these people in key Australian roles that I'm a bit ambivalent towards it. I just want to see us win games. So whoever's the best coach, if they can come in and drive results in whatever environment that is, I'm pretty happy with it. Although I was surprised that Zane Hilton wasn't announced as a successor to Kiss. I thought that might be the case, but then it also makes you think, is Zane going with Kiss as an assistant for the Wallabies? What else is happening there? So, I think by and large I don't mind Kiwi coaches coming across. I think if they're going to improve Australian rugby, great. But if after all these years, starting with Robbie Deans, if they've all been moles and they've all been there bringing down the system from within, then they've absolutely ghosted us. So, well, fair play to them.
Well, I mean, the only thing I would say is in this debate is when's the last time a Kiwi coach won something of significance in Australia? Like, I mean, the Waratahs went backwards under Gibson. We have not won the Bledisloe with Rennie. With
you give Dingo
Deans, Robbie Deans. We didn't win
Robbie
anything
Deans,
though.
He won a Tri Nations in 2011. That's it.
Good job.
That's the biggest trophy, and that is a
Checker
long
got us to a
time
World
ago.
Cup final, and he was Australian. So
True. That's better. And he won Rugby Championship that year. It's been a big drought.
And
it's been a big drought. Yeah, man. We'll see.
Anyway, let's keep moving because there are two or three last things we should finish on, and I am conscious of time because we've been going on a little bit. So the Sevens. The Aussie Sevens are featuring in Singapore as we speak. They'll be playing their semi-finals or fifth place playoffs if you're the men's team. So, Lachie, what are your thoughts on how the team has featured across the weekend in the Sevens format?
Well, firstly, can we just talk about Singapore as a Sevens venue? Because if you look at the crowd, I swear there are about 20 people in that whole stadium, and they're all in the VIP section at the front. What is going on there? It's terrible. It's a terrible look for the game with no one in the crowd to see some of the best rugby going about. So that's my soapbox on Singapore. As for how the Aussies have been going, if you sort of think about how Sevens usually plays out, that's kind of where we're at. The women have gone through their pool undefeated. So we're recording this on Sunday, the 1st of Feb, around mid-afternoon. We haven't seen the semis and the final, and we won't get to touch on them. But Aussie women undefeated in their pool. They ran through and defeated. Let me just get this up again. Got a win over Fiji, 35-7. The women then defeated Japan 26-19 and the same score over the USA. But the story of the women's side is Maya Stewart coming across from the Wallaroos, their all-time leading try scorer, and she hit the ground running in sevens, scored with her first touch. She's had 3 tries on the first day, including the match winner against the States. We've been saying this, get more integration across both teams, because she absolutely killed it, Mitch.
Yeah, it was great to see her, and the sort of story that goes around it. Like in a interview after a debut, she's talking about how she wanted to play sevens since she was like 5 years old, and so this is a dream of hers. And even though she's got so many caps for the Wallaroos, it feels like this is her first time playing at this level, and she was really nervous and all that type of stuff. So really good to see that transition. I think, if anything, we probably want to see a little bit more of it go the other way. We want to see a few more of the sevens girls featuring for the Wallaroos. But at this point in time, like, the Super W's not on for another few months. So let's get the talents of the Wallaroos players into the sevens system. Another player who would be as deadly, if not more, on the wing is Desi Miller. I mean, we know what a great finisher she is, and Maya Stewart's gone to show this weekend that you just need to give her the ball in like a little bit of space, and she'll make anything of it. So again, really exciting to see and watch this Aussie Women's Sevens team play, because with the likes of Stewart and then the Levi sisters, and then Faith Nathan, Bella Nasser, all these household names now, you give them like half a centimetre of space and they're away, scoring some phenomenal tries. So it's great to see her adding to that repertoire.
So exciting. Like the fact that we could see like a Desi Miller and a Maya Stewart going to the Olympics after playing so well for the Wallaroos and getting into that sevens team. Like, it's super exciting. It's really good sign. So fingers crossed for our women's as they hunt for gold in Singapore. The men won't get that chance. They lost 2 of their 3 pool games. They got a win against Argentina first up, which is massive, but then dropped the ball against France and New Zealand. So same sort of story with the men so far. There's a lot of young players. They're missing Henry Patterson. They're missing James Turner, and a few of their seasoned players, and just not quite clicking into gear. But still some unbelievable individual talents in there, like Wallace Charlie, Cooper Waters. These are all young guys still in their teens who are super exciting. So I think we're kind of going to rinse this one and hope for Perth, because the men have performed really well in Perth. They've played the past 2 finals, and obviously the women are defending champs there. So lots to look forward to next week.
Can I just say on the format, the new format of the sevens system, the World Series this year. So they've got 2 pools now with 8 teams across both pools. So 4 in each. The way that they've done this tournament, and I know that they take in the rankings of the last tournament played, but looking at the pools, like Pool B, which Australia is France, New Zealand, Argentina, and Australia, all in the same pool. Like, that's ridiculous. That is crazy. And I know the idea is that you're trying to make each pool game feel like a final. And that's what it's doing. But I think there's still a lot to prove with this format. And I think we'll start to see it later in the year, because Argentina, we've seen them in the last few years in sevens be absolutely killer. But this series, they've lost all of their pool games. So it's weird, because one week, and it all comes down to who's in your pool. Like the other pool, Pool A was Fiji, South Africa, Spain, and Great Britain. And Great Britain haven't been great, and Spain's still up and coming. And so all of a sudden, it's like you've slumped the best in pool together and then the not so great in the other pool. And so you get into finals, and you're all of a sudden playing teams who probably shouldn't be there. And it just doesn't feel as good, I guess. And then you'll start to see, as the series wears on and the different what do they call them, locations or city hosts are played throughout the series, that the overall table is going to look really funky, because in one weekend, South Africa is going to do really well, but then the next weekend, just purely on the fact that they're playing like Spain and Great Britain as opposed to New Zealand and Fiji. I don't know. It just feels like the table and the end result isn't going to be as fair or balanced as it used to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's because they've gone to a top 8 system based on last year's rankings. So like a lot of teams that we love seeing at the sevens, like the Kenyan men, for example, or Ireland men, although they've had their own problems with the program. Some of these other teams on the women's draw that we don't get to see anymore, they've been lost to Sevens Division 2 and Sevens 3. And they're still putting on these events. They're still streaming it on Rugby Pass. There's a lot going on, but it feels like the format has suffered from too much of the same teams. So yes, they're creating these really competitive environments with the 8. They're replicating what I think to be the Olympic format, or they're trying to make it more centered around preparing teams for the Olympics and that style. But I miss having more teams. I miss having more variation, and I would love to see it expand again. I think it's just around cost of getting teams across the world, and you could start by maybe reconsidering Singapore and gate takings, because they're not making a big bank out of that. They must have a very good partnership going on there to keep the coffers open. So and sevens, like we've seen, is so volatile. We've seen the format change. They went through a recent style change maybe 2 years ago, where it went from the World Series to sevens. And branding yourself differently. So I think they're still
weird,
working a few nuts
sun
and bolts.
thing going on that looks
it's interesting.
Chat GPT.
It's a bit daggy. Yeah. it's a strange mix, but I still love the format. It's when I'm talking to people who don't know or not as familiar with rugby, the first thing they'll often say is like, "Oh, do you know Alona Mar or Charlotte Caslick or Maddie Levi?" Like, what the sevens do, particularly for the women's game in Australia, is so big. So we know how important the format is to endure, but it's a strange old environment. So I think watch that space and certainly get excited for Perth next weekend.
Another bit of news actually that just jumped in my mind there as we're talking about sevens is the Levi sisters have re-signed with Australian Rugby. So they're in through till, what is it, 2028, 9 or something?
28. They're through to the Olympics.
Yeah.
So massive get, because they were getting tied to NRLW, going across to the Titans and all this hoo-ha, never eventuated. So they've locked in a big deal. But it's good that you mention that particular deal, because what we have seen and what we haven't got on our run sheet are more and more Wallaroos players going to league. So in the past week, we've seen Lane Morgan, the Wallaroos halfback, I think one of the most capped of all time. She's got 30 plus caps. She signed with Parramatta. And we've also seen Arabella McKenzie, who was left out of the World Cup squad, but also a very experienced playmaker and inside centre. She signed with St George Dragons. So we're seeing we're seeing more Wallaroos head across as well. I think Tatum Bird, the New South Wales halfback, has also signed with the Roosters. So there's plenty of movement going on, and I think a lot of Aussie women's rugby fans will be keeping a weather eye on that transfer market, because with no formal announcement of what Super W looks like yet, we imagine it's going to mirror the Super Rugby Old Picky later in the year around August. But I think we're going to see a few more players get picked up if Rugby Australia's not really careful.
But one exciting other bit of news that did come, another thing that's just jumped into my mind, sorry everyone, is the Wallaroos will be hosting the Black Ferns at the first ever Anzac Day test, which comes up next month after, April. Yeah, so what are we now? We're February. It's soon. But we've been talking about it on the podcast and in other various mediums for the last year or so about the idea of playing an Anzac test between the Wallabies and the All Blacks. Logistics just haven't come to the table, but the fact that we can see the Wallaroos hosting the Black Ferns, I think that's awesome.
And it's a great stadium too. So they're taking up to Sunshine Coast Stadium, where we see a lot of the Broncos and the Storm used to play preseason games up there. But it's a wonderful facility. They hosted the Australian under-20 TRC a couple of years ago up there as well. So it's a big sort of natural basin. You've got 3 hills of grass and then a big grandstand, open concourse area. I think they'll get a really good crowd. And taking test matches to regional-ish areas, I guess you'd call Sunshine Coast, still built up, but like just not always being at Ballymore or not always being at North Sydney Oval. It grows the game's profile. We get these Aussie stars in front of people, and it's so exciting. So to have a test match that early, I think is a huge draw card, and what we're hoping for, I think, Mitch, is that it paves the way for this to be the big event where you get a double header, you get the men's side involved as well. We get that Anzac test that people have been crying out for so long.
And also with the fact that our Pickies moved back later this year to allow some of their top players to play over in the Premiership and to play sevens, whatnot, there might be a chance that opens the door slightly for the Wallaroos to get their first ever victory against the...
Don't give me hope.
Maybe
don't give me
against
hope.
the Black Ferns. So, yeah.
It would be amazing. We have never held the Laurie O'Reilly Cup, and it's up there with the Blitters, though. I want it badly. I want it really badly. Mitch, before we finish up, quickly on our Aussies abroad. So a bit of news going around. Let's start with the sad one firstly. One of the greats of the Tahs, and he is, because he's one of the great characters as well, Ned Hannigan, has been medically retired, which came as a shock to quite a few people. He was playing over in Pro de Deux in France with Provence, and I believe it's been linked to concussion. We don't know for certain, but career cut short for one of the great cult heroes.
Yeah, Ned Hannigan's always a player that we, as a Waratahs fan, you always love to see him with his golden locks putting on the Waratahs and Wallabies jersey. Probably got his first Wallaby jersey a bit too early in his career and copped a fair bit of hate around that, unfortunately, which was not great to see. But yeah, it's sad to see a figure like that not still be able to play. It's taken him over 12 months to get whatever this injury is right, and the decision has then obviously been made that he can't go back to playing professional rugby and needs to medically retire, which is unfortunate for a player like him and the livelihood of his family and whatnot. But we wish him all the best in what he does next, and we would have loved to have seen him come back and finish a season in Super Rugby or put on that gold jersey again once or twice more.
Yeah, great country story. You know, Dubbo bloke, he's come over. He debuted in 2017. So he actually played for quite a number of years, sort of in and out of the squad. He finishes up with 28 Wallabies caps. He was really in the fight for a test spot in 2023 World Cup as well. You know, he was over playing the Australia A games in and around the squad. So I think he'll be missed. I think the legacy of Ned Hannigan will probably show that he was treated quite unfairly around sort of his physical profile at test level. He was never going to be this massive guy, but he put in some good shifts for a bloke who didn't have the same sort of height and weight profile as others. But some better news from abroad, Mitch. We've seen Noah Lolesio back on the park after that neck injury that he sustained against Fiji that derailed his 2025. We've been into that and how tough that was. He is back. He's in Japan League 1 playing Division 2 for Shockey Shuttles, and he got off the mark with 6 conversions in a 60-point win. So safe to say he's looking pretty comfortable, but another sort of forgotten man in the Wallabies 10 jersey role now. Well, what do you make of him being in Japan and being back in the frame?
Yeah, great to see him back playing rugby again. So you see when these players get these long-term injuries that put them out, that like Ned Hannigan, you never know if they are going to be able to get over it and get back playing or not. So the fact that he's been able to go through his rehab and get over the recovery and back on the rugby field's awesome for him. I'm sure the Brumbies are watching his progress very keenly to see how he goes over in Japan, because you know they could probably use him right now.
Elsewhere overseas, we mentioned it off the top, but we are a little worried about Len Ikitau. We've seen that he suffered a shoulder injury just before Christmas. He's doing the rehab process with the Chiefs, which is tough. But what I'm really worried about is the update on Tom Hooper's knee injury. So, for those who aren't across this one, Tom Hooper was hurt in the opening stages of Exeter's loss to Bristol in the UK Premiership. He's undergone scans. He's played 8 starts, but they're worried that it's really bad ligament damage. So we're talking MCL. That could be up to 10 weeks. Why aren't Exeter looking after our Wallabies, Mitch?
That's right. I mean, that's the downside, isn't it, of these sabbaticals. We always talk about how good it is from financial perspective to get these international clubs that are all cashed up to be paying their mortgages for us for a year or two. But the reality is you go over there and you could get injured, and they play rugby in different conditions to what we play down here. It's wetter, it's colder, it's you play much more. There's multiple games a week. There's different competitions that they feature in, and your workload's a lot more than it is in Australia. So for these younger players that do go over there, it is a worry. It's a concern that they're going over and they're putting their bodies, who are used to the Australian environment, under test and under endurance. And when they get injuries like this, it's concerning. And hopefully, he gets through it and he gets fit and he gets back on the rugby field before he does come back, because we saw in 2025 how important both Ikitau and Hooper was to a successful Wallabies campaign. So we need both of them fit and firing.
Two of the best in the business. We mentioned, best guesstimation around Tom Hooper at the moment is 10 weeks if it's an MCL, but we have not had confirmation whether it's an ACL or not. And we know that ACLs take a lot of time. So if he's done his ACL, that's his Exeter season done. You throw in the fact that Lenicky Towell's shoulder injury is going to keep him out till March. Like those are two major injuries, so we're going to keep an eye on them overseas through the Premiership. Quickly in the URC, we've got one of our brightest and best over in Ulster. That's, of course, Angus Bell, who's on sabbatical from the Waratahs. Mitch, we sent a clip through just before we jumped on record of Angus Bell stepping 3 Cardiff backs on the way to a 30-metre runaway try. He is getting better and better, and now on the European stage, he's starting to get the profile that we've probably been trying to gas him up for the past few years. He looks unbelievable.
Yeah, it's always that thing, isn't it, of when players go overseas, unlike Ikitau and Hooper, who've gone over and got injured. He's done the likes of Mac Hansen and who else? Sione Tuipulotu, who've gone over to Europe.
As long as he doesn't stay. Whoa.
Oh, I'm not. He's not staying. He's definitely coming back. I'm just saying he goes over there and he gets even better. And so he's over there, and we've seen him. He makes breaks for the Waratahs and Super Rugby, and runs away and scores tries like that. Like, he's a freakish player, but I don't think I've ever seen him with that sidestep. So if he can bring that back and bring that into Australian rugby and do that for the Wallabies, I'm all for it.
Super exciting stuff. And finally, the last little bit of news that we've seen, one for our women's rugby fans in particular, Jo Yap. So the Wallaroos coach for 2 years. She has returned to England for family reasons, but also she's been unveiled as the head of women's pathway for the RFU, so for England. So she's going to brand new role. She's basically looking at ensuring that the Red Roses' dominance and success continues, because she was a hell of a coach with the Wallaroos, got some really big wins, obviously WXV2, finished up at the end of the World Cup, but she's now going to be in a position where she's probably looking to pile a bit more pain upon the Wallaroos and every other country. Well, what a contribution, and probably just desserts for someone who was an excellent figure for Australian rugby.
And hopefully there's not too many Wallaroos players who have English and Australian parents, grandparents, or passports, so that
they
she's
got
not
one, didn't
pinching
they?
anyone.
But they got one. There was a lady from the Reds who's come across with English heritage. So Haiti Head is coming through the Aussie ranks. She played a bit of, I think, Red Super W and maybe Red Sevens. She signed with the Trailfinders, and she's already in the Red Roses squad. So there's already one coming through the ranks. We'll keep an eye on Haiti Head as she goes. But I think that just about wraps us up for Aussies abroad. Have we got any other business before we wrap up?
No, I think we're pretty much done for this week. But what do we have on our extra time coverage this week, Lachie?
Oh, it's going to be great. So we mentioned this sort of off the dome. I'm very fortunate that Scrumbags has been given access for Super Rugby Media accreditation across the board, and also to be able to do some more work with the team. So we were lucky enough to sit down briefly with the Brumbies and with the Force in their media days. So we have interviews with, from the Force, Matt Greeley, Kurtley Beale, Ben Donaldson and Nick Champion de Crepney, all of which will be coming out on extra time over the past couple of weeks. And then also from the Brumbies, we managed to get quick chats in with Billy Pollard, Alan Alatoa, Rob Valentini, Corey Toole and Tom Wright. And the Tom Wright chat was really interesting around his ongoing rehab from the ACL and his involvement with the Brumbies program more broadly. So make sure you keep an eye out, coming out on extra time. That's where we'll be pushing it really hard. So I would love for you to be able to jump in and enjoy that as well. Those are the kind of offerings we want to give our subscribers in 2026. That's right. So do keep an eye out on Patreon. And if you're not already a member of that, it is free at the moment until Super Rugby kicks off in 2 weeks' time. So make sure you're following that and you're across that to get that extra content as well. That's going to be awesome. Make sure you keep an ear out. So that's dropping Wednesdays as well. Stay tuned. And Mitch, thanks again. Well done, Waratahs. That's all I can say. Yep. Year of the Tar is well and truly alive. Undefeated in 2026. I love it. And to all of you, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next week. Bye. Bye.
We're not going to France for the croissants.